In Victoria, there are more than 1 million people who have a disability, and roughly 17% of those people cannot catch public transport. This makes commercial passenger vehicles an important part of everyday life. For those passengers with disabilities, CPV rides can be good and a lot can be bad. The impact of a driver's behaviour on a passenger's experience can really be enough to make or break anyone's day. Drivers really do make a huge difference. So in today's podcast, I'm joined by 3 fantastic guests to discuss the ups and downs of riding in CPVs. Nicole, it's great to have you here today. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so my name's Nicole Smith. I work full-time. And I also go to a lot of social engagements, and most of the time when I travel, it's via maxi taxi in my wheelchair.
Great, thank you. Stella, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, I'm Stella Barton, and I'm a 22-year-old uni student, and I use taxis and Ubers from time to time. I don't have a regular driver, so I never really know who's going to pick me up on any particular day.
Thank you. And Nadia.
Hi, my name is Nadia Mattiazzo. I am a blind woman and I have a seeing eye dog called Olympia, and I reasonably regularly catch taxis, especially during this lockdown period.
Great. I hear Olympia's also been known to be called Princess Olympia.
Without a doubt.
So let's get into today's podcast. At CPVV, we're big believers in the journey being just as important as the destination. However, we know the experience in CPVs for people with accessibility needs isn't always flash. Nicole, what are some of the experiences that you've had in a CPV that haven't been great?
Well, at the moment I have my own taxi people that I call who have their own business, because my experience with just flagging down a taxi off the street has been horrible. People don't stop, or they don't stop somewhere where it's safe. So for me in my wheelchair, I need people to stop at curb cuts so that I can get off the curb and go onto the road safely, and they often don't do that, so I'm stuck crossing busy roads or something like that. And I'm quite a cautious person, and so I like the idea of feeling safe with who's driving me around, and so because I have a regular driver now, I know who he is, and he's got my family number if they need it, and I just feel a lot safer. It feels like he's part of the family rather than a stranger.
Yeah, great. And how long have you been using him for?
Since about 2012.
Yeah, wow, so that's a long time.
Yeah.
Great. And are you travelling in a wheelchair accessible vehicle?
Yeah, in a maxi taxi, so one of the bigger ones with the electronic ramp at the back.
So for people who don't know, what is a maxi cab or a maxi taxi?
So a maxi taxi is one of the bigger yellow vans, which is able to fit a wheelchair in the back. So when I'm in the back of a taxi, I'm strapped in with straps that are connected to the floor, because I can't independently transfer into a seat. So I need to stay in my wheelchair while we're travelling.
What about you, Stella? What are some of the poor experiences that you've had while riding in a CPV?
In general, I would rather take the train because it feels more reliable. Once on a rainy Friday night, my electric wheelchair ran out of power and I needed to book a maxi taxi, but it took nearly 3 hours to arrive. Often with Uber drivers, they won't wait the extra 2 minutes I need to get to the car. Other times they pull up on the other side of the road, and for me getting my wheelchair across the road I need to find a curb cut to get across, but if I'm walking it's also quite dangerous for me to walk across the road to get to the car. If they pulled up on the same side of the road it would be much safer.
Yeah, that's, I think, unfortunately quite a common experience, just knowing about the nuances of where to pull up and where's safe to pull up. So it's unfortunate you've had those experiences. So Nadia, what about for yourself? What have your experiences in a CPV been like?
So most of mine have probably been positive because I catch taxis reasonably regularly. I would say maybe 80% have been good experiences, but you tend to remember the bad ones. And at one stage when I first got Olympia, my seeing eye dog, within about 6 months I had 9 or 10 refusals, and it was all about the dog. Various types of refusals. Drivers didn't even bother to pull up, they would just drive off. Drivers would argue with me. One driver actually pulled away while I was still holding on to the door of the taxi. So various levels of refusal, I guess. And I still remember all of those, whereas I guess overall that the number of drivers that I've had that have been good far outweigh those that have been bad or that have given me bad experiences. I now have a regular taxi driver that I use. Unfortunately, he does not work 24 hours a day. I think that's very selfish of him. But, he has to sleep and too. So I try and work my life as much as I can around when he works. Unfortunately, that doesn't work for a fair amount of the time, so I do have to take taxis where I'm not familiar with the driver and I don't know what he's going to say or what they're going to say in terms of whether the dog is accepted or not.
We actually had a bit of a chat earlier around some of the challenges during COVID about where Olympia would sit in the vehicle. Could you explain a little bit about that?
So when Olympia was trained about 7 years ago, she was trained to sit in the footwell at the front of the taxi, so in the front seat with me. Obviously, because of COVID restrictions, it was required that passengers sit in the back of a taxi. This is a little bit problematic in that it really then means that I take up the entire of the back seat of the taxi because I will sit in one half of the taxi on the seat and Olympia will sit on the floor on the other side of the taxi. So in terms of travelling with somebody else in a taxi, it kind of made it almost impossible unless the driver was willing to let me sit in the front of the taxi. So it has been a bit of an ordeal.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
And it's just thinking through those nuances and those little things that make it really challenging that I think is really important for drivers to consider, especially in times of COVID where restrictions change things. Can I just ask as well, when you have been refused service with Olympia, do you have any idea why that would be? Do you think it's sort of just a fear of taking a dog or the fact of what a dog may do to a vehicle or...?
All of that and more. So it can be the fear of the dog. It can be that, like, I've had a driver say that my dog wasn't in her harness when I tried to get in. That is just such a lie that, I laughed. She's always harnessed when I am travelling with her or when she goes out in public and I'm using her as a seeing eye dog. People are concerned about her leaving hair in their car. So, often when I get out of taxis, they'll either get their vacuum cleaners out or before I get in a taxi, they'll go to their boot and get a towel to put on the mat on the floor, or they'll turn the mat upside down so that the back of it is facing up. And often I'll say to them, what about everybody's feet? What about the dirt that people bring in off their shoes? All of those kind of things. There's probably more of that on your mat and in your taxi than hair from my dog. It is a bit of a challenge. Often it's people have had bad experiences with dogs out of taxis, so they've been bitten by dogs or attacked by dogs. Olympia wouldn't attack anybody because, well, if she did, she wouldn't be a seeing eye dog. So it's about really explaining that to them and having the time to explain that to them and having the patience to explain that to them. You know, when I'm in a hurry, can't be bothered explaining or trying to educate the driver. I don't have time to do that. But then there are other times when I'm happy to talk through those issues with the driver. And sometimes the issue resolves itself. Other times I could, talk till I'm blue in the face and it just won't resolve the issue. So usually in that instance, I just call another taxi driver or I get them to recall the job or I put in a complaint.
The bad experiences can sometimes taint things for the long term, but I hope you have all had some good experiences in a CPV, and it sounds like you have. So we'll start with you again, Nicole. What are some of the good experiences that you've had, either with drivers or just in a CPV in general?
Well, I've only ever really had good experiences since I was calling this man directly. So what happens is I message him on a mobile number, and then he has a group of drivers that work with him, and he will send whoever's closest. So I would say about 85% of the time they're 25 minutes or less. At the moment it's more difficult because during COVID there wasn't anybody going out, so a lot of drivers left the industry. So I know that the man that I call is struggling a little bit with getting just enough staff at the moment. So there's also that side of it as well, that often they try their best but they can't find somebody in a timely manner. But I'd say 85% of the time it's 25 minutes or less. So that's great. There's been times when my wheelchair is about to run out of battery. Just recently I got my battery replaced, but before that it was about to run out of battery, and I called him and said, this is where I am. If my wheelchair goes flat, can you come and pick me up? Or even if there's even if I'm out on a walk and there's a busy road and I'm scared, I'll call him and say, just while you're driving, are you able to stay on the phone with me while I cross the road safely? And then there's things like just the little touches, like he'll message for my birthday or something like that. So when you get bad drivers, it stays in your head, but when you get good drivers, it changes your life. Like I wouldn't be able to work full time. I wouldn't be able to have the social engagements that I have without him. So that's been really good.
What about for you, Stella, and your good experiences?
Many drivers are really nice and will happily put my folding wheelchair into the boot of the car. A good ride can make your day.
Exactly right. It really can.
Right. That would have been long. People like me to get into there.
So what I'm hearing is that it would be great if drivers just had a little bit more patience and could wait until passengers reached the vehicle, and also would park on the right side of the road so that you didn't have to cross the road. What about for yourself, Nadia? Any good experiences?
Absolutely. As I said before, probably about 80 to 85% of my taxi usage is a positive experience. With my regular driver, it makes it really easy to book him to take me to places that I'm not very familiar with. I can totally feel confident that he will pick me up at the appropriate time. So if I need to go to meetings for work and I choose to use a taxi and he's available, it just cuts the stress load so much. I think that it's really important for drivers to understand about accepting seeing eye dogs in their taxis, and if they do have issues with my dog, like if they're afraid, often just letting me know that they're afraid of the dog. Like if we're able to sit in the front and the driver is afraid and he tells me, I'm a bit concerned about your dog, I will always offer to sit in the back of the taxi. And that often then waylays their fear or their concerns about the dog. It's when they start off negatively that creates the bad experience.
So what I'm hearing is that it would be great if a driver would just enter into a really open and honest conversation with you, and if they have fears or concerns about the dog, to just raise that with you up front, and that way you can have the dialogue about it instead of making assumptions. Would that be a good way to put it?
100% correct.
Nicole, you wanted to add on to that?
Yeah, I think just following on from what Nadia said, it really does take stress out of your day. Like I self-manage my NDIS funds, I self-manage my support workers, and so I feel like I'm organising for a lot of my day, and so a lot of the time I will call my taxi and say I need to be at a certain place by this certain time, and then they will work out the time for me, and they'll say that means I have to pick you up at this time, so if you could be here by this time, that'd be great. So I think you can't underestimate or overestimate, I should say, the stress that it takes away from people's lives if the taxi people are willing to sort of go that extra mile and help you organise as well.
Look, let's just conclude and round up with one sort of sentence each, and that is, if a driver could make the biggest difference to you in your CPV journey, what would it be? Nicole, we'll kick off with you.
Realising that I am a person with my own life and that sometimes things might run late that I can't control, and just being able, as Stella was saying before, being able to be patient and wait those 5 extra minutes for me to get off a phone call that I'm making or something like that. And just recognising that it's not the quantity of customers that you take, it's the quality that you give them, which I know is difficult when you're running a business, but it really makes a difference to each of our lives, I would say.
And Nadia, you've sort of mentioned a few things, but is there anything else you'd like to say that would make a huge difference in your experience?
Absolutely welcome me as your passenger, but also welcome my dog. We come as a package.
Beautiful. And I can vouch that Olympia is a beautiful dog and a beautiful princess. Thank you so much for joining me today, everyone. It's been really insightful, and this will make a real difference to the drivers out there to hear about your experiences and what has an impact on your day, and it really does have an impact on your life. So thank you again. So as you've heard from our guest today, as a CPV driver, you get to provide a service that enables people with disability to travel with confidence in a safe and inclusive environment. As a driver, you have the power to help your community, the power to put a smile on your passengers' faces, and the power to make a real difference. Thanks for listening today, everyone.